Who's the most difficult champion in League of Legends? What about the easiest? In today's video, we're going to be answering those questions, ranking every champion from easiest to hardest for Season 13. To be as clear as possible, these rankings will be focused around how easy or difficult it is to pick up said champion. You may have heard this referred to as the skill floor of a champion. Think of it like, how many games does it take to play the champion at a proficient level? The lower the amount of games, the easier the champ, and vice versa. From easiest to hardest, we'll have 4 different tiers consisting of easy, medium, hard, and expert. These kind of lists can be very opinion-based, so to eliminate as much bias as possible, we looked at an interesting stat to help us make decisions on certain champs. The stat being the one-trick win rate minus the average win rate for each champion. A higher number from this formula tends to indicate a more difficult champ, while a lower number points towards an easier champion. For example, someone like Dr. Mundo Top, his one-trick win rate minus his average win rate is only 3%, which goes to show that he's pretty simple to pick up, and the more time you spend on him doesn't lead to a crazy increase in power. Now, of course, it's impossible to please everyone with a list like this, so if you guys disagree with any of the rankings, then let us know why down in the comments below. So let's start things off by taking a look at our top lane easy tier. These are champions that should take you less than 20 games to get the hang of them and begin playing at a level where you can be impactful. Malphite, for example, has point-and-click abilities for all of his basic spells. You can be first timing Malphite and easily impact games just by being super tanky and hitting the occasional ultimate in team fights. Just by diving on the enemy ADC and pressing E, you limit their DPS potential by a large margin, and it's not difficult at all to pull this off. Malphite's one-trick win rate minus his average win rate is only 3%, so based on his stats, he's someone you can see good results with almost immediately. Our medium tier for top lane consists of champions that require a bit more skill expression but are often still pretty straightforward. Someone like Mordekaiser is by no means a difficult pick, but he does have 2 skill shots, and Mord E can be used in very unique ways based on the situation. For this reason, it's going to take you at least a couple more games to learn Mordekaiser's kit compared to that of Malphite's. And bringing some stats into this one as well, Mordekaiser's one-trick win rate minus his average win rate is 5%, so 2% higher than that of our easy tier, Malphite. More skill shots aren't the only factor that make a champion more difficult though, or else we wouldn't have Jax in the medium tier. Malphite can just brainlessly toss his Q out for poke to win trades, while a champion like Jax needs to pick and choose his trade windows a little more selectively. Playing off enemy cooldowns is often way more important with these medium tier champions. So although Jax isn't too mechanically demanding, he's definitely not in the easy tier, because learning matchups and knowing what you can accomplish at certain points in lane are more vital to your success. Moving up into our hard tier for top lane, you're going to run into a lot of micro and macro demanding champions. Gnar is a really good example here, as he's a champ who has multiple skill shots, has a very unique kit with his rage bar, and needs to time his transformations properly to see maximum success. Simply learning how to stack rage efficiently before a team fight will take you multiple games to get used to. Although Singed isn't a very mechanically intensive champion, the macro required to play an optimal Singed is so much greater than the average top laner, which lands him in the hard tier. Proxy farming is something that's pretty unique to Singed that very few other champions perform as regularly, so learning this new playstyle is going to take you a substantial amount of games. And for the expert tier, these are the champions you'll need to spend the most amount of time on to simply play them at an average level. Aurelia is a great example of an expert tier champion, as there's so many things you have to focus on with her compared to the majority of top laners. Keeping track of passive stacks, being aware of low health minions for Q resets, combined with hitting E consistently are just a few things that make Aurelia a little more difficult to pick up. Aurelia, along with most of the other expert tier champs, are also very feast or famine, lacking considerable hard CC, so you need to know your matchups way more to see good results. Learning matchups can take hundreds of games, so it's a big factor to why these champs are in the expert tier. So even though we had Mordekaiser in our medium tier for top lane, he's in the easy tier for jungle. So why is that the case? One of the major factors in a jungler's difficulty rating is how adaptive they need to be with each game. Mord can literally just full clear, hit level 6 as quick as possible, and begin taking over games from then on out. In fact, if you want to learn more jungle for Season 13, we have a dedicated course for it on our website to help you guys out. Shyvana is of a very similar theme to Mord. You don't need to interact with the enemy jungler or even gank at all to win games on Shyvana. Control objectives, farm efficiently, and you will win games through that consistency. For the medium tier, we're getting into junglers who require a little more game knowledge to pull off. Even though Evelynn does like to full clear and is pretty easy mechanically, the way you play her due to the stealth mechanic is something very unique to Eve, so it's not super easy to learn. With a lot of the medium tier junglers, you require more of a game plan than the easy tier junglers. You can just farm all you want on Master Yi and Shyvana, but to get the most out of someone like Zax's kit, you need to be ganking and keeping track of your teammates' lane states. For the jungle hard tier, we're getting into many picks that are a lot more volatile and can be punished way harder when making mistakes. If you're playing a medium tier tank like Sejuani, Zac, or Amumu, losing early game isn't the end of the world, as you know you'll be impactful come the mid game. For this reason, learning specific jungle matchups isn't the most vital for many medium and easy tier junglers. For hard tier junglers though, like Rengar, Shaco, Zed, and Qiyana, falling behind isn't an option if you want to be impactful in any way. This means you need to learn your jungle matchups, understand your champion's limits at certain stages of the game, and have a set plan on how you're going to snowball. The expert tier for jungle is very volatile, just like the hard tier, but these champions are even more mechanically demanding. Nidalee passes the eye test for an expert tier jungler, but the statistics are also aligned perfectly to really solidify her spot. Nidalee's one-trick win rate minus her average win rate is 10%. That spread is absolutely insane, and it just goes to show how night and day the champion is depending on who's piloting her. For the mid lane easy tier, you're going to find champions who require very little mechanical skill and are also very effective with a small sample size. Annie is for the most part all point and click. Even though her W and her R are technically skill shots, they're almost as easy to land as point-and-click spells. It's also super easy to impact games with Annie, even if you're first timing her, as multi-man Tibber stuns in teamfights are not that difficult to hit. Knowing matchups are also not that important for the majority of these champs due to the fact that they have ways to contribute even when they're behind. Jumping over to the medium tier for mid lane, we have someone like Kassadin, who you could argue is even easier to play with than Annie mechanically, but with Cass, there's a lot more that goes into the champ beyond mechanics. Cass is much less impactful when behind than someone like Annie, so you're a lot more reliant on knowing how to play early game matchups. Getting the hang of how to enter fights properly is also more difficult for an assassin like Cass, as you have to pick and choose your openings more carefully. In the hard tier for mid lane, you're gonna find many more mechanical champions and picks that are generally a lot more vulnerable. Cassiopeia is a really good example of this, as she's a shorter ranged mage who is 100% reliant on landing her Q skill shot to deal damage. So not only do you have to worry about consistently landing your spells, but spacing properly is way more important on Cass, which is not easy to learn. The expert tier for mid lane is scattered with champions who are extremely volatile and need to be played in a very precise way for you to see results. The stats really back up this tier as well, with Lee Sin, Qiyana, Yasuo, and Lucian all having the spread between their average win rate and one-trick win rate above 8%. Qiyana has always been one of those champions who decimates the higher elos but struggles a ton in the lower ranks. Players that don't spend a ton of games on Qiyana just don't see anywhere close to the results of those who have. Making our way down to the bot lane, the easy carries are ones that are not extremely reliant on spacing and weaving auto attacks to be effective. Ashe, MF, and Sivir have elements in their kits that allow them to influence games without having to auto attack at all. Same thing with Veigar and Seraphine. You can lose lane, not have a clue how to play your matchup, but still end up more impactful than the enemy carry by landing one good crowd control ability. For the medium tier, Tristana is a champion we originally had in the easy tier, but bumped her into medium because she's more reliant on weaving autos to be effective. Now with that said, due to Tristana's self-peel and long-range gap closer, she's one of the more noob-friendly medium difficulty ADCs if you're looking for that slight step up from the easy tier champs. We actually have a detailed guide on how to carry low elo from ADC that involves a strategy for Tristana, so check it out on our website if you're interested. Varus is a tricky one because although he has ways to be effective without requiring immaculate spacing and kiting, he's still more skill shot reliant than the easy tier picks. With Varus, every single one of his damaging spells is a skill shot. You can definitely be impactful on Varus without needing to kite efficiently, but it's going to take a bit more time than the easy tier champs. Taking a look at the hard tier for ADC, a common theme you'll notice among most picks is that they're very short-range champs. Not only are most of them shorter range, but they don't have ways to be effective other than dealing damage. These two factors make it extremely vital that you're mechanically sound, as you have to be outputting DPS without getting caught to carry games. The expert tier for ADC is just a small step up from the hard tier. For Ezreal, he's way more reliant on hitting a skill shot to deal maximum DPS compared to the hard tier champs, which puts him a tier above. Kalista is an extremely unique ADC, as no other champion has her mechanic where you can hop after auto attack. This mechanic alone will take you a ton of time to get used to, and when you also factor in Kalista as a shorter ranged, extremely early game reliant ADC, she's the furthest from a noob-friendly champ. Having a look at the easy tier for support, let's talk about why we have Brand here. Keep in mind that we're ranking champions based on how easy they are for you to pick up right away and find success. Now, although Brand may be more difficult to master due to his abundance of skill shots, all you have to do is point and click R in a team fight to be impactful. You can literally be inting on Brand, miss every W, but have your Liandry's finished, press R in a bunched up team fight, and deal a mass amount of AoE damage. The medium tier for support is not as forgiving as the easy tier. You can win games on Heimerdinger by simply putting down towers and creating pressure, but with many of the medium tier champs, they're a little more nuanced than that. Yuumi was actually one of the more difficult champs to rank because, believe it or not, based on statistics, she's actually one of the more difficult champs. The difference in win rate of a one-trick Yuumi and an average Yuumi is 11%, which is not something we expected. Instead of leaning more heavily on stats, we sided with the eye test for this one, as the skill floor of Yuumi is not all that high, considering she can be impactful by just pressing E on her carries. Nami was a little more difficult to rank as well because it's easy to get confused with skill floor and skill ceiling. For this video, we're rating champs based on skill floor, and in that case, it's not that difficult to pick up Nami and see decent results right away. If you're playing with Lucian, all you gotta do is place W and E on him and you're golden, which is not difficult at all. Hitting Nami Q on a consistent basis is where the skill expression of the champion lies, and it's not easy to do. If this were a list based on the skill ceiling of champions, Nami would likely be in the hard tier instead of medium. The hard tier for support features a lot of champions who either have very unique playstyles or are super skill shot reliant. If you're someone who mains ADC, then learning Senna is not going to be all that difficult. For a support main though, who's never played a traditional ADC, Senna plays so much differently than your average support, which will take most support players a lot more time to get used to. Someone like Blitz on the other end of the spectrum, where you have one single ability that makes or breaks the champion. So learning how to use Blitz Q and finding consistent results with him makes his skill floor quite high. Just 3 champions in our expert tier for support being Thresh, Xerath, and Bard. Now, you might be wondering, well, how is Xerath an expert tier, but Brand and Zyra are easy? Aren't they all skill shot reliant mages? Yes, however, Xerath doesn't have that easy-to-land AoE nuke that both Brand and Zyra possess, and his skill shots are much more difficult to land. Xerath needs to hit his basic skill shots to be effective. He can't just blow the enemy team up with one spell, which makes his skill floor much higher than someone like Brand.
Alright guys, before we wrap this up, let's tell you a little more about SkillCapped. So, we offer a 5-division rank-up guarantee, and think that's a pretty crazy thing to offer. It's like a gym membership guaranteeing you'll get ripped. Your local gym would go bust if they offered that, right? Not us. We've offered this for years because our service really does work. It works so well, in fact, that we're able to produce by far the largest catalog of premium league guides on the internet. We add over 20 videos a week, with over 1,600 guides curated into over 100 courses no one can compare. We've also sent challenger players into ELO Hell 714 times and counting, where they commentate how to carry live. They also respond to all questions asked. Sign up today for as little as $6.99 a month if you are serious about improving.
So there you have it, guys, ranking every champion from easiest to hardest for Season 13. Thank you all so much for watching, good luck in solo queue, and we'll see ya in the next one.